Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for March the 4th. Today we are reading together from Exodus chapter 24, which is going to contain the covenant ceremony that's going to bring many of the leaders of Israel up onto the mountain, at least some of the way for various groups of them. And then Moses is going to enter up onto the top of the mountain, where he is going to receive not only copies of the Ten Commandments and the Book of the Covenant, but he's also going to receive a number of instructions concerning the tabernacle and other various pieces of what is going to become the Jewish religion that is seen in the carrying out of various portions of their faith and their religion, their ceremonies, and their practices. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Just a little short read today, and then we'll have a little bit more to say tomorrow as we read together from chapter 25, which is going to include things concerning the building of the ark, the table is within the tabernacle, the lampstand, and so on. And then 26 is going to get us into the tabernacle itself. So let me get the text up on the screen for us. Exodus 24. Really glad that the weather did not seem to get as bad as had been predicted yesterday. It seems that everybody is doing okay and fine, and we're very glad to hear that. Exodus 24 in verse number 1. Exodus 24, verse number 1. Then he, being Yahweh, said to Moses, Go up to Yahweh, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 of Israel's elders, and bow in worship at a distance. Moses alone is to approach Yahweh, but the others are not to approach, and the people are not to go up with him. Moses came and told the people all the commands of Yahweh and all the ordinances. Then all the people responded with a single voice, We will do everything that Yahweh has commanded. And Moses wrote down all the words of Yahweh. He rose early the next morning, and set up an altar and 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel at the base of the mountain. Then he sent out young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as fellowship offerings to Yahweh. Moses took half the blood and set it in basins, and the other half of the blood he splattered on the altar. He then took the covenant scroll and read it aloud to the people. They responded, We will do and obey all that Yahweh has commanded. Verse 8, Moses took the blood, splattered it on the people, and said, This is the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has made with you concerning all these words. Then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 of Israel's elders, and they saw the God of Israel. Beneath his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as clear as the sky itself. God did not harm the Israelite nobles. They saw him, and they ate and drank. Yahweh said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay there, so that I may give you the stone tablets with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction. So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua and went up the mountain to God. He told the elders, Wait here for us until we return to you. Aaron and Hur are here with you. Whoever has a dispute should go to them. When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it. The glory of Yahweh settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called Moses from the cloud. The appearance of Yahweh's glory to the Israelites was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain, and he remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And that is Exodus chapter 24. Again, that's setting up what's going to take place because beginning tomorrow from chapters 25 through 40, we're going to have all those chapters are going to be the covenant, the instructions concerning the tabernacle, apart from a little interlude that's going to take place as Moses has to go down the mountain and reprimand everybody for being, we'll just say, not very smart in creating the golden calf and such. But here in Exodus chapter 24, again, this is Moses going up again, but he is not the only one who is going up. We also see him going up with Aaron and his sons, his two oldest sons, Nadab and Abihu, and then 70 of Israel's elders. It's significant for Aaron and Nadab and Abihu because, of course, they are going to be the future priests. Priests will come from the tribe of Levi. So them being involved in this moment is significant, seeing as how the priests are going to play an important role in the religious practice of the people moving forward. They're going to go and they end up bowing in worship at a distance from Yahweh. Moses is the only one who's able to approach. They're not to approach. The people are not to go up with them at all. And again, we mentioned this already, and I think it's worthy of repeating that this partitioning of the ability of various people to go certain distances up the mountain, some not even be able to go on the mountain at all, is foreshadowing what's going to take place in the tabernacle and in the temple. And I think that that's something that is important to recognize here, is that what we see and what we're going to see concerning the tabernacle and the temple is that those things are representing what we have here at Sinai. That Sinai is this dwelling place of God. I mean, it is called in numerous places the mountain of God. This was his special sacred place. This was his holy place where his presence dwelt for a very long time. And this was the place that they were told to go. And having having the presence of God in this place, obviously they couldn't stay on this mountain forever. So they had the tabernacle, which was a representation of the mountain, going with them. And eventually God in his presence is going to dwell on another mountain, which would be Jerusalem, and in the temple there. So we can kind of see the way that the story of Israel is playing out in the fact that we have God on his mountain, Sinai or Horeb. We know that those are somewhat interchangeable. There's at least some overlap there. And then moving on from there, they have the tabernacle, which houses God's presence. His glory is going to come down there, and that's going to take place. Let me see here. That's going to take place later on in the text, chapter. Oh, I meant to write this down earlier. Chapter 40. So chapter 40 and verse 34 is where God's presence is going to come down in the same way, the cloud, and be present in the tabernacle. So we see that here. Moses, he comes back down the mountain, it seems, after this. He tells all the people concerning all of the commands of Yahweh, all the ordinances, and the people repeat what they said in chapter 19, verse 18, is that we will do everything that Yahweh has commanded. The text says Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord, all the words of Yahweh. He rose early the next morning and set up an altar and 12 pillars, and then there's sacrifices taking place. There seems to be burnt sacrifices here for the purpose of atonement. And then there's also sacrifices here concerning fellowship, the fellowship offerings. He does what he does concerning the blood, and in doing this and making this atonement and in making sure that this fellowship is established, he then reads the covenant scroll, everything that has been told to him. He then reads it to the people, and the people, again, they respond, they affirm what they're hearing. We will do and obey all that Yahweh has commanded. So we've seen that 3 times now. We've seen it in chapter 19 and verse number 8. We've seen it here in chapter 24 and verse number 4. We also see it here in chapter 24, verse number 7. We will do it. We will do it. Moses takes the blood, splatters it on the people, and says something that's probably very familiar to us. The language is very similar, at least. This is the blood of the covenant. We would finish that. We're probably most familiar with saying, this is the blood of covenant given for you. That obviously referring to Jesus and his what he said at the Lord's Supper whenever it was established, the Last Supper in the gospel accounts. Here, this is the blood of the covenant the Lord has made with you concerning all these words. I want to emphasize here that it is Yahweh who's making this covenant. One resource I was reading made a good point. It wasn't as if Israel was shopping to see who they would make a covenant with, that they would either make a covenant with the pagan gods or they would make a covenant with Yahweh, and they would kind of get to dictate the terms. No, this is Yahweh coming to them and saying, these are my terms. You must accept them. And here they are saying, we accept them, and the covenant therefore is entered into with these sacrifices and the splattering of the blood. So at this point, the text tells us that Moses and Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, the 70 elders, they go up, and it says that they see the God of Israel. And that in and of itself, the fact that they don't end up dead might be very strange to us, because in chapter 33 and verse 3, or excuse me, chapter 33 and verse 20, the text says pretty explicitly, God himself says, "You cannot see my face, for humans cannot see me and live." Well, how do they live then past this point? How do we read here in a moment that they're going to be eating and drinking? Well, it is because they don't see the face of God. All they see is beneath his feet something like a pavement. So it's not pavement like we might think of it, something like a pavement that's made out of lapis lazuli, which is an opaque blue color, very brilliant in color, which makes sense why it would be described as even clear as the sky itself. And the author here wants to make it known and really emphasizes the fact that God did not harm the Israelite nobles. Even though they saw him, he did not harm them. And why? Well, because they only saw his, maybe saw his feet, and then they saw what was below it seems. And yet that does not lead to death. In fact, they end up eating and drinking, partaking in more than likely what is a covenant meal, something we've seen already before. That takes me back, at least for me, it takes me back to what we see with Abraham and Melchizedek, that meal that they shared in together. We also see another meal that's going to be eaten in chapter 29 and verse number 32, I believe it is. 29 and 32. This is going to speaks of Aaron and his sons eating in the presence of Yahweh, eating in the tent of meeting. So this is again foreshadowing priest eating in the presence of God, again showing the covenant and fellowship that they have with one another. At this point, verse 12, Yahweh says to Moses, you come up to me and stay here, so that I may give you stone tablets with the law and the commandments I've written for their instruction. So Moses now takes Joshua, not Aaron and not Abihu and Nadab, not these elders, just Joshua. They stay here. And what's funny to me is that you stay here, Aaron and Hur are going to stay with you, and whoever has disputes should go to them. It's kind of ironic to me, seeing as how Aaron's going to be one that's going to contribute to a lot of trouble here later on in just a few chapters, unfortunately. But Joshua was able to go with him. Now we're not told how long or how far Joshua was able to go. He's able to go some distance, obviously not the whole way, since it just says that Moses goes. So Moses does end up going up the mountain. Tells us the cloud, which contains Yahweh's presence, covered it, and then the glory of Yahweh settled on Mount Sinai and covered it for 6 days. What's interesting is that word "settled" actually has the same root word as the word tabernacle. So what we could understand as well is the glory of Yahweh tabernacled on Mount Sinai. Tabernacled on Mount Sinai, and that is a concept that we can understand in a number of ways. One of the ways is understanding that tabernacle is being in the presence of someone, in a sense. We could say that God has tabernacled with us through the means of Jesus, that God tabernacled with humanity through the means of Jesus, being that God's presence was in Jesus, and then because Jesus is God, and then therefore God's presence was with mankind. So again, this is showing up the place where God's presence is and how it is among mankind, here specifically on the mountain. And eventually, again, going on to chapter 40, we're going to see that presence being in the tabernacle. The appearance of the Lord's glory to the Israelites was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain. He remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And of course, it's necessary because we're going to see a lot of instruction given to Moses here over the next many chapters, as he receives again many instructions concerning the temple concerning the tabernacle, and many things that were present within the tabernacle. just a lot of instructions, a lot of details here, a lot concerning the pattern of what this is supposed to look like. So we'll be looking at that over the next few days as we read together throughout this particular section. And again, we'll have a little bit of a breakup here once we get to chapter 32, because that's going to be an incident of the golden calf. And so that will add a little bit of a different flavor to the readings once we get to chapter 32. I appreciate you tuning in for this reading on this Saturday morning. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. Again, thankful to God for the way he's provided for us over the last couple of days. Let's be praying for those, though, who have been affected in various places across the country with these various storms. I know Zach and Caden are going to be gone probably a little bit longer. They got hit with another storm up in Michigan. So please continue to pray for them, and hopefully they'll be coming back home to Tennessee here within not too long. Again, thanks for tuning in on this Saturday, everyone. You have a great rest of your day. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, reading together from Exodus chapter 25. Take care, and God bless.